Thanks to those of you attendees who showed up a few minutes early. This Acronis virtual boardroom will get started right about the top of the hour. Please stand by for just another minute or two. Thank you. Welcome everybody to today's Acronis event hosted by GED Media Group in conjunction with the Global CIO Forum and the Global CISO Forum. Today's virtual boardroom is entitled Defending OT and ICS Uptime. I'm your host, James Slaby. I'm the Director of Cyber Protection at Acronis. I spent about half my career in tech working as a solutions and product marketing guy for cybersecurity vendors and networking vendors, and the other half as an industry analyst covering those sectors at US-based research houses like Forrester Research. You can check my LinkedIn profile if you're interested in learning more about my background. Today's conference is being recorded. We will email you a link to the event with the recording afterwards, so you can share it with colleagues who could not make it today. Your microphone will be muted throughout the event, but we are interested in your questions. I have an amazing panel today that will be available for live Q&A towards later on in the event, and so we really want your questions. So keep those coming, please, through the Zoom Q&A interface. We want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day here to be with us, and to thank you for that, we're going to do a drawing at the end of the event. 3 attendees today will receive a complimentary 1-year subscription to Acronis Cyber Protect Home Office. This is basically the consumer version of Acronis's business-oriented cybersecurity and data protection product offering. It's a fantastic bit of software for protecting your home devices. We're including protection for 5 devices and a terabyte of cloud storage for a year. So that's worth sticking around for a chance to get to that. So please stay to the end so that you can enter that drawing. All right, let's review the agenda. We'll start with a keynote from our esteemed guest speaker, Mr. Mohammed Siraj of Schneider Electric. I'll come back on stage to provide a brief high-level overview of cybersecurity and IT operations trends in the industrial control system operational technology space. Next, I'll bring on our panel. We've got, again, some incredible speakers. From Schneider, we've got Mr. Miraj Mohammed, and from Acronis, Mr. Mohammed Khalid and Ryan Davis. I'm going to lead them through an extended discussion of the many challenges that we face in protecting, protecting our OT and ICS environments. Khalid will then come back and give us a very brief tour of the Acronis approach to addressing these uptime issues. Then the panel will come back on stage to take your questions live. I'll close the event with that prize drawing, and then I'll point you to some other resources for additional reading. All right. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. Mohammed Siraj is the Cybersecurity Business and Strategic Alliances Manager for the Middle East at Schneider Electric, where he brings 2 decades of experience in operational technology and industrial IoT cybersecurity initiatives in the region. As part of Schneider's Global Cybersecurity Solutions and Services team, Siraj strategically engages with customers for OT and IIoT cybersecurity solutions and services to meet their security objectives. He oversees government risk and compliance consulting initiatives to help customers comply with international and local frameworks and standards, and to achieve their cybersecure digital transformation goals with advanced cybersecurity solutions and services.
Thank you, James. Today I'll be talking about the significance of ICS cybersecurity resilience in Middle East. And I would like to, before I start, I would like to thank Acronis for arranging this informative session, which is very important because this is very crucial and very much required in the region. Okay, so today we'll be discussing about creating cybersecurity resilience in OT, which is operational technology. As we all know, strong cybersecurity is a business requirement, but as we have witnessed that there had been continuous cybersecurity attacks on the critical infrastructure in the past years, and we have learned that these attacks were intentional by the cyber criminals. And the good news, on the other side, we have learned that there have been a lot of awareness, and there have been a lot of efforts being put, investments being put to ensure there is a readiness to overcome those cyber attacks. Now, if you talk about companies, I mean, most of the organizations with critical infrastructures, they have been active engagement from the senior executive boards, and they have been actively participating in such initiatives, cybersecurity initiatives, when it comes to specifically OT, and they have ensured that their team is developing the frameworks, best practices are there in place, and they have invested on the human capital. So now when we talk about the resilience and business continuity, this is one of the topic which is one of my favorite topic. To achieve this, the most important element here is to onboard the asset owners. The critical asset owners, they are very much important to be onboarded. They are the one who is managing the show when it comes to operational technology. And there are some few best practices been mandated and even been recommended by international bodies or international cybersecurity standards when it comes to EACS, talking about industrial automation and control system. And we are heading towards an era where we are talking about, even if there is a cyber attack, how you can ensure that your operations are not interrupted or not disruption. There is no disruption, and you are making sure that there is a business continuity. And we'll try to cover this in coming slides with some of the recommended best practices and how you can define those objectives or how you can achieve those objectives. So there is a history of cyber attacks, but I'm sure you must have seen in the previous slide, which is very important, that we have learned over a period of time from these attacks that what were the best practices been implemented and what steps or what measures were taken in order to tackle those situations. Now, when you talk about the statistics, if you're seeing on the screen, I mean, we know there are a lot of cyber attacks happening in critical space, but even if you see this, every 14 seconds, a ransomware attack occurs. If you talk about an average value of the breach is almost $3.8 million you're talking about. And the sad part, which is changing dramatically, that only 2% of the IT budget was used to be used for cybersecurity. So, but now things are changing dramatically thanks to local cybersecurity authorities, the awareness they have brought, and even the organizations like Acronis or the industry leaders, or you're talking about even the internal team who is bringing awareness of what is the importance of cybersecurity. Now, before we get into this, we need to understand the major differences between IT and OT. So IT, information technology, and when you talk about OT, operational technology, if you see this, these are the major differences which defines a very focused approach. When you talk about focus, confidentiality and availability is the priority of IT, whereas in OT, safety and availability. When it comes to technology, is commercial off the shelves, COTS. When it comes to IT, whereas mostly it's proprietary and hardware for when it comes to hardware and software. When you talk about the life cycle, again, it's three to 5 years in IT, whereas it's 15 to 30 years in OT. And this itself determine the importance, and even the implementing cybersecurity and the strategy differs in IT and OT. When you talk about the changes, it's mostly unproblematic when it comes to IT. When it comes to OT, this requires production standstill, and this goes through various other approval processes, and it's all about the cycle management. And again, when it comes to dynamics, it's very dynamic when it comes to IT, and when it comes to OT, it's very statistic. So now, when you talk about these major differences, that leads for us to have a systematic approach when it comes to addressing the cybersecurity for the operational technology. So let me start with IC 62443. This is an international series of standards which addresses the cybersecurity requirements for EACS, industrial automation and control systems. So if you see on the right side of the slide, there are security assurance levels. I mean, it's a way of implementing cybersecurity in various different levels. So if you talk about SL1, which is security assurance level 1, addressing employee errors. You're talking about SL2, addressing cybercrime and hackers. When you talk about SL3, which is more onto the cyber terrorism and the hacktivist. When you talk about SL4, is nation state cyber terrorism. It all depends on the facility level, identification of the facility level, the criticality of the facility level. It all depends on the criticality of the systems, the assets. So it's a process where you have to, where you define which all controls are applicable to this specific organization or specific facility in the OT world. Now, in the left side of the slide, if you see, there are 7 FRs, the foundational requirements. When you talk about identity and access management, okay, you're talking about how you have identification and authentication controls in place, how you have the use controls, how you have the system integrity in place, data confidentiality, restricted data flows, which if the time permits, I'll try to cover this part. And restricted data flows, when you talk about, I mean, it's very crucial not only for cybersecurity, even apart from the digital transformation capabilities, and timely response for events, which when it comes to digital forensic and incident response and beyond that, and the resources availability. So it's a continuous process when you talk about the compliance, which requires the 24/7 uptime and continuous monitoring. Now, NCA OTCC, so National Cybersecurity Authority of Saudi Arabia, they have introduced NCA OTCC, which is Operational Technology and Cybersecurity Controls. And if you see this, there are 4 principal domains when you talk about cybersecurity governance, cybersecurity defense, cybersecurity resilience, and third-party cybersecurity. And on the right side of the slide, in the middle of the slide, if you see this cybersecurity policies, procedures, roles and responsibilities, there are various other expectations from NCA that any organization with critical infrastructure to have these practices, the controls, the sub-controls in place. But let me talk about backup. When it comes to backup, there are certain controls, the NCA have expectations from organizations, for the organizations with critical infrastructure to have this backup and recovery management best practices in place, and it all applicable to criticality of the system, criticality of the facility, like I've mentioned in the previous slide. Now, zero trust architecture. This is very important because we have been discussing this since past 2 years, and most of the organizations have adopted. Now, zero trust architecture is not a solution. I mean, it's an architecture which goes with your principal architecture, and there is a process which we call it PDEP approach. I mean, there are requirements which need to be qualified, but zero trust architecture is something which is widely discussed and been implemented. And if you're interested, then definitely, I mean, in the next sessions, we can have a deep dive sessions on this part as well. Now, concluding this very quick notes, I mean, there are 15 cybersecurity fundamentals for critical infrastructure. So we talk about enforce user access controls, we call it UAC, and they're talking about validating the risk. You're talking about cybersecurity culture. You're talking about securing your supply chain and insider threat. By the way, this is a topic of discussion widely discussed across Middle East, and we are working very closely with the organizations on how to address these insider threats with very specific solutions and the best practices, and talking about the vulnerability management. And apart from this, how you have a incident response plan in place, how much you're exercising, how well it is documented, and you're talking about PAM, privilege access management in place, and you're talking about having the SOC, security operations capability, where you're able to have the continuous monitoring of your operational network. But if you see the right side of this slide, there are certain recommendation, you can say top pick, okay, talking about secure architecture. So when you talk about in operational technology, in OT or ICS environment, you have various architectures in place based on which the systems are deployed.
Looks like we lost Mohammed Siraj for a little bit here. I'm going to wait to see if his connection comes back. Yeah, I'm afraid we are going to lose the last 30 seconds or so of Siraj's keynote. He didn't get to a few of the cybersecurity controls that he was talking about, which is too bad. but I want to thank him for a remarkable platform for the rest of this event. That really did a nice job, I think, of setting the stage for us here and the rest of our discussions. That was really something. So thank you so much for that, Suraj. All right, I wanted to move right on to my presentation on ICS cybersecurity trends. And I'm going to go through this material kind of quickly here because I really want to get to our panel. So Suraj talked about downtime costs, and I imagine most of you attending here have a pretty good idea of how much an hour of downtime costs your employers. We all are tasked with this responsibility to keep that production environment up and running. That means, among other things, keeping the computers that control our OT up and running and restoring them quickly when they fail for whatever reason. It's another thing Suraj did a nice job of, I thought. It's not just about cybersecurity, it's human errors. There are a lot of potential sources of failure, and they all lead to production downtime. So we've got to try to anticipate those. Backups don't always run as fast as we'd like them to, or in the time that we have allotted for a production standstill. Rebuilding those computers from scratch is complicated, it's error prone, takes way too long. On top of this, most of us don't have local IT support resources. And if our network is not air gapped, if it's any kind of network connection into it at all, that exposes us to all the kind of cyber threats that Suraj was talking about. So in general, what we want to do is once we have configuration working, we want to leave it alone. Again, Suraj did a nice job alluding to is most of these environments are relatively static, built, put together years ago. In some cases, they're more than a decade old. They've got their tasks, they do them well. By contrast, the computer hardware they run on is much more variable and short-term in terms of its shelf life. So you may be using computer hardware that is not made anymore, may run on an operating system like Windows XP or Windows 2003 or Windows 2008, or some antique version of Linux that their vendors aren't supporting anymore. They're not issuing updates or patches, and they're almost certainly too old to run any cybersecurity products. Your OT vendor does not want you messing with the setup either. So you have the further concern of worrying about compliance issues if you make any kind of changes that result in process changes. Malware is obviously one of the big concerns if we have any kind of cybersecurity exposure here. Our own research shows that cyber criminals are churning out over 250,000 new samples of malware every day, and they only last for less than 2 days on average. I'm going to talk at another conference later today about how AI tools like ChatGPT are going to make this problem even worse, basically improve the scale and productivity at which they churn out malware. So if you're lucky, your OT environment has very limited exposure to any outside connections, but if it has any at all, then you need to worry about a range of cyber threats. I'm going to focus on the middle ones here because those are the ones that seem to be most common threats here. But so, for example, if you're opening up any kind of a remote connection, if you are routinely downloading software into the environment, you're exposed to tech supply chain attacks. Ransomware is a massive, high-scale threat, and many of them are worm-enabled, so all it has to do is hit another system on the network, and you're potentially exposed to that. So we have quite a few things to worry about here. I think this has several implications for how you protect and restore the computers that control your IT environment. A few questions that you got to ask yourself. Does your automation software vendor like the package that you're using? Have they blessed it? Have they tested it? Is the solution fast enough to hit your limited windows that you have for backup, or better yet, can they operate on live systems without the need for scheduled downtime? Can it rebuild your environment from scratch if you have to? Is it automated enough so that you don't need an IT person to initiate and complete the process? Can it help you with related activities that you might have to do, like inventory and vulnerability assessment? As important, I'd say, is can it protect you regardless of the cause of the outage, whether it's a cyber attack, whether it's just a failure of your hardware. This is common enough in old PC hardware, a hard drive can fail. Is it a software issue, human mistake? Or humans are still part of the equation, like we haven't been replaced by AI yet, or even a natural disaster. All right, that wraps up my piece. I want to move on to our panel discussion. This is most of the, I love the discussion that we typically get going at these events. So let me welcome my esteemed panel here. First up is Mr. Miraj Mohammed. He's the cybersecurity business leader for the Middle East and APAC regions for Schneider Electric. Miraj is a 20-year industry veteran, leading OT cybersecurity business strategy in the region. He also drives OT cybersecurity and industrial IoT cybersecurity strategy for Schneider's industrial automation and energy management business. Welcome, Miraj. Joining Miraj on my panel is my colleague, Mohammed Khalid. Khalid is the senior solutions engineer for Acronis, responsible for managing the entire Acronis SE team throughout the Middle East and Africa. He provides pre-sale support to our resellers and service provider partners, making sure they deliver well-designed, cost-effective cyber protection solutions to their customers. He holds a bachelor's degree in engineering and has over 17 years of experience in data center infrastructure, cybersecurity, and data protection solutions. Welcome, Khalid.
Thank you very much, James. Always a pleasure to be with you for such kind of fantastic gathering.
Likewise, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you at GITEX. All right, last but not least is my Acronis colleague, Ryan Davis. He serves as our senior director for OEM partnerships. Ryan has over 10 years of experience building storage, data management, business continuity, and cybersecurity solutions across the commercial sector, with particular depth in manufacturing, OT, ICS, and IT issues. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks, James. Happy to be here.
All right, let's jump into the discussion here. Suraj did such a great job of kind of setting up a broad array of cybersecurity issues, but there's more I want to dig into here. Starting with the regulatory environment, there's obviously significant challenges in rationalizing what we do to protect the uptime of our operational technology and our industrial control system environments, and making sure that that fits with what regulators want us to do with making sure that we keep our businesses compliant. Miraj, you want to offer some insight there as to some of the challenges and how Schneider's helping its partners and customers address them?
Absolutely, it's a great question, James. So when OT cybersecurity started, like Siraj was giving the clear picture about IT and OT when we started OT critical infrastructure from 2010. In those early days, there was no such importance being paid on the ICS uptime, even though it's critical for operational resilience as a strategy. So I would like to give to our colleagues is, the uptime is all depends upon the best practices that we've been communicating to our customers globally, and we say the availability is really important. You need to also have to maintain those backups. There was no such regulatory compliance being documented or being given to that respect to geographical area. So the best practices were also, there was only best practices being followed, and we also faced the importance of understanding that uptime, and there was a lot of awareness is not being available, and documenting the risk of the assets and uptime, how critical is that asset if that's not available. All of this was not been available until when we have a regulatory compliance being being available for respective. If you go to any geographical place, if you go to Qatar, or you go to Saudi Arabia, you go to India, you go to any other place, they all have a regulatory compliance. Now let's take a use case of regulatory compliance. Regulatory compliance, they mandates, and they apart from the best practices that we've been following from the automation vendors, we also give the best practices. Apart from the best practices, the regulatory compliance gives that confidence to the client that we are complying to those the requirements. Let's take a use case about Saudi Arabia NCA compliance. If you go to the section 281, it's clearly mentioned in the document of OTCC document that backups of all OT assets must be covered and stored in a centralized and offline locations. It's really clear mandate that we need to follow. We have to follow that mandates. Apart from these regulatory compliance, and the challenges are they're not being implemented. They may not be given the priority. Now the trend is different. The mandates required to be followed, and we help the customer in OT cybersecurity to explain them that availability, how important is it. We help the customer to do that asset inventory of the entire plant. What are the assets they are owning at the moment? What are the risks if that asset is not available because of God forbid any unforeseen situation? So we document that, and we develop a policy as well for the client, that a backup policy. Let's take on the use case of backup policy. How frequently the backup has to be performed, how frequently we have to test those backups. All of those best practices, we help the client, we help them to mandate those requirements, and we help them to get compliant end of the day and keep the operation going uptime. Thank you, James.
That's really interesting. I imagine that there's significant variation across the region to different compliance authorities, and that part of the value that you're providing is a kind of a deep understanding of that and ability to kind of guide your partners and your clients in addressing those requirements.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm a technologist. I work for a technology vendor. We are often our first instinct in solving any problem is to throw technology at it. And we would love for everyone to view technology as the answer to every problem. But we're all pragmatic business people here, and we understand that there's a lot more to the equation than just the proper deployment of technology. I wanted to talk a little bit about the process element of it, right? There's this fundamental tension between the essentially static nature of OT and the much greater, more dynamic nature of IT, and how these sometimes run counter to each other. Just one of many kind of process challenges that we have to deal with. What other process changes or challenges do you see out there in maintaining OT and ICS uptime? Ryan, do you think you could get us started with there a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to provide a couple of comments, and I'd be interested in what the other gentlemen think as well. In my experience, from a process perspective, one of the challenges that was hit on earlier is one of the biggest things that we fight, which is any sort of change typically requires some sort of downtime or some sort of extensive scrutiny. And a lot of times that change management becomes an inhibitor really to any sort of action, right? And so I call that inertia. And so I think fighting that status quo is probably one of the biggest challenges that we face in these sort of environments. And going back to another comment that our keynote speaker had mentioned, so really what I see as the biggest challenge is that inertia preventing the organizations from following through on their organizational readiness plans. And so that's really the biggest challenge that a lot of the cybersecurity experts in OT have to face, which is aligning the proper stakeholders on the customer side, the asset owners, the operators, and ensuring that this gets the proper prioritization for them to actually follow through once they identify the risk. And I think the regulatory environment is actually really helping us with this. If you're operating in a country where they are mandating a certain level of cybersecurity posture, having a partner like Schneider that can enlighten the owners and operators to the potential regulatory risks that they face can help the customers get the proper prioritization and institutional support to be able to move forward. So, fighting that inertia is really, really important, and having a partner that can kind of identify where the regulations really provide the incentive for them to focus has been very helpful for us.
That's great stuff, Ryan. I've got a lot of topics I want to cover and not a lot of time, so I'm going to move on from the process issue and talk about the people challenges. We always in cybersecurity space, I'm always recommending that people refresh their security awareness training. Our colleagues out there who are not as focused on cybersecurity are just trying to do their jobs, and cyber criminals are getting increasingly devious about ways to social engineer them and so forth. So, that is a pure people skill that we need to focus on. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the people skills that you think we need to focus on around this particular challenge around OT and ICS uptime. Raj, you have any thoughts about that?
Sure, James. So if you see, there's a lot of data being generated. One of the biggest challenge facing the IT and OT professional is there's a lot of the merging of IT and OT networks. During this convergence, there's a lot of data being generated from those devices that we have in the network. Now, in terms of protection, or in terms of people understand they very well about protecting the perimeter, they're protecting those insiders. There's not much attention being paid on how to protect the data for the availability uptime. So one of the main aspects that I see is the cybersecurity awareness and training is heavily required, should be part of their strategy. Has an investment when they are developing the security roadmap. The people should be trained, and they should be given the importance of availability of uptime. Now, what are the training should involve apart from the technical training of the product or the vendor trainings? I would recommend that there is a lack of development of the policy and procedures. We have seen many customer places or some of those environments where there is no backup policy available. There should be a skill required, and the customer has to document, or those end users, they have to document those backup policy, how frequently they can able to back up, and how frequently they have to test those backups, have the strategy, whether the system is backing up and restore is happening. What if scenarios has to be developed? I believe there's a lot of skill. I feel that there is a gap in that. Probably there should be proper documentations being available. Auditing has to be done, whether this is being backed up and we restored. Did we export the backups outside the premises? And there is something called golden backups, and there's also standards being implemented. So all of this, as a nutshell, I would recommend is the awareness and the training and the documentations, policies and procedures. All of these are really should be there to maximize the availability of the uptime at the time of at the time of incident. So I believe in a single word, training, awareness, documentation, that's all we need to pay more attention and focus to keep availability at all times.
Thanks for that, Miraj. All right, I haven't managed to involve Khalid in the discussion yet here. Seems like the solutions engineer might be a good person to talk to about technology challenges. Khalid, I know you're going to give us a little insight into how Acronis deals with these, but I wonder if you could talk more generally about the kind of the key technology issues that you see around this uptime issue.
Yeah, for sure, James. And as we heard right now, the regulations, guidelines that we have to follow, and the human mistakes, and the policies and documentation, as mentioned by Miraj, coming also to the process, as highlighted by Ryan. We are here as solution engineering to give the solution the flavor that covers all of this. So we try to make everything fulfilled. For example, as highlighted, the NCA requirements for local management and the centralized console. So the solution should fulfill that kind of requirements, that you can have central console where everything is registered, or your machines, your virtual machines, your workstations, in one single console. And this will give you ability to push the product or the agent that will control everything remotely from one centralized location, and the ability to connect it to local backup storage as well, where you will be able to save all your data over there. The main target, as you mentioned, how to make sure that the uptime will be always 99.99 something, which is making sure that we will have the minimum loss as much as we can. So to build your system with the proper backup running online as well, for data protection, making sure that you're not interrupting the production. This is 24/7 systems, making sure that your backup solution will not impact the performance of the machine, will not impact the input outputs of the machine. Take your backup, make it locked as well. We have ransomware attacks that may immediately come to encrypt your backup, and they come to your production. You have no way to go back. So definitely making sure your backups are locked from any attacks or any modifications. Making sure also to put right retention. So for the compliance regulations, that we need to maintain this backup for a certain 6 month or 1 year, for example. Making sure that this will not be deleted by mistake by someone unless the retention period is over. Validating the backup also is very important. Making sure that this backup is recoverable. I can have a backup which is something good, but during recovery time, it is corrupted, so it will be useless for that. That's why ability to run your backup as a virtual machine in any hypervisor environment will help you also to validate and test if this is really works. You made one copy, definitely you should have another one off-site copy, maybe on another storage on a separate site or on a tape, will give you also the possibility for any disaster may happen to the production and the backup copy at the first location, you will have the secondary site to recover from. And definitely on top of all of this, why we made all of that? To make the RTO very minimal, come back again up and running in very short time. And the giving up option to run your backup as a VM, you just need to wait for the boot time, which is couple of minutes, to bring everything back online and survive from any disaster.
It sounds like you speak from experience there with trying to recover from a corrupted backup. I know I've experienced that nightmare myself. That's probably a good segue into the notion of war stories or success stories. I think they're both equally illustrative when we talk about these environments. Is like what were the failures that or lessons learned from it, as well as what were the great successes. I'm sure you all have some great kind of actual case studies taken from real life here, without revealing any names here or just violating any confidentiality. I wonder if you could share a story with us. Ryan, I think you've got a lot of experience here. Maybe you could share an anecdote with us that illustrates what we're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the things that Colin talked about in terms of the capability, the functionality of the solutions are really, really important. And to add on to that, the validation of the technology into the platforms is also a really important component, right? In terms of success. I think one of the first statements in the keynote was, it's important to recognize that OT environments are different from IT. Lifespan of some of these devices, 15 to 30 years, it's just different. And so where we've seen a lot of success, and one of the things that I really love about our partnership with Schneider is, working with our partners, working with the OEMs to do the testing and to do the validation on the different types of systems and the different platforms, so that customers can have confidence that they have a solution that is not going to create any complications or conflict with any of the production systems. It's very, very common for us when working with an organization that has spent the time to do an inventory of their different systems, and they'll provide a laundry list on different types of platforms and really ask, is this going to work across all of these different types of systems? And OT is not, it's running Windows XP or Windows 2003 or Windows Server 2008. They're running a certain type of HMI or a certain type of PLC or a certain type of DCS. And looking for both technology vendors as well as the OEMs that bring validated technology to the market where their customers can have confidence is really important, and one of the things that we've seen allow our customers, neutral customers with Schneider, to be really successful.
Thanks for that, Ryan. We're running a little long here. I wish we had a little bit more time to continue this discussion, but I wanted to give Miraj the last word here. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the relationship between Schneider Electric and Acronis, and how that has reflected on the uptime issues that we've talked about today.
My pleasure, James. And Ryan has rightly said, Schneider has always been in the OT space for more than 12 years now, and with our experience, and we've been testing and validating various solutions at our customer innovation center in Dubai and in Saudi Arabia. And then at one point, we were looking at OEM, I cannot use the name, a competitor one. And then I said, hey, Acronis has innovated a lot of features in their product. Why can't we bring this to our offer to our clients and help them they solve those backup and restore issues? One of the issues that we've been persistent is, like Khalid has mentioned, about NCA compliance, centralized dashboard to see what is backing up or what is not backing up. And then we started having that collaboration with Acronis, and thanks to entire team over there, they came back and we have tested rigorously that restore mechanism, and we have seen some of the key features in Acronis is the file system, the backing up the file system. Sorry to be very technical on that, is the file system is easy to understand and it's well managed by Acronis as a product, and the restore of the system is easy and can be initiated centrally, locally, or through the bootable media. So that gives a lot of flexibility for the administrator if they want to restore it back. And one of the key features I have seen is the backups are encrypted, and when we do the backup, we need to ensure there is no malware being. So we can also enable the antivirus and to reduce the threat landscape of the any malwares coming in, because when you do the backup, we don't want we carry backup outside the facility with the malware inside. So most of the cases we disable the antivirus so that the backup goes very quickly, to speed up the backup uptime and etc. But now Acronis is so being designed in a way that we can enable the antivirus as well. Now, validation of the backup can be done on the server side to reduce the CPU load on the remote host. So most of the time is the operator station. They are very critical. They are they're monitoring those critical assets. We don't want the CPU to be consumed or their CPU being heavily utilized to do the backup and restore validation. No, we want to reduce the operator CPU loading so that the remote server can able to do the validation by itself, so that we use a server CPU rather than the operator where he's monitoring the asset. We should not be utilizing that workstation CPU. So there are many other features that we have seen, and we also hear from the clients, from the big clients, saying that, Mirage, we had a problem at one of the sites, and we did the restore all night. I mean, I didn't understand how we spent all night restoring in the system, when I know that the product, what the client was using it, and I said, look, you got to switch to their product which is flexible enough. You can able to bring the uptime as quickly as possible, because the availability is the priority for the OT. So now we have partnered with Acronis for the entire region, and we are taking that as a global partnership. Not only we tested Acronis for our non-critical assets, we also tested Acronis for the critical assets. And when we do that comparison with different OEMs, we have seen Acronis is up above of any of those technologies. And thank you very much for the collaboration, and thank you very much being very patient and doing those testing processes at our innovation lab. Thank you.
Madash, thank you so much. That's a great way to end our discussion today. I wish we had more time, but we do need to move on. Gentlemen, don't go too far, because we need you to answer the audience's Q&A after the next segment. This is where I'm going to hand the baton off to Khalid, who is going to give us a very brief tour of the Acronis solution. Khalid, are you ready? Are you ready to take the ball here?
Yeah. Waiting for that moment.
All right, go ahead then.
Fantastic. So what I will do right now, whatever we discussed in the panel discussion and the story that we talk about, how we ensure the uptime is always happening and always the minimum, I will start to show you how this could be done by Acronis Cyber Protect. And this is the product that we are focusing on right now, where you can simply create your account.acronis.com, create an account on that website, and you will be able to add your keys for the product. If you have workstations, if you have servers, if you have virtual machines or virtual hosts, you will bring the license for it and you put it here. And this will help you to click on open the console, and on the cloud, definitely you can use it for any business like IT business, but for OT, which is designed for isolated environment without internet, air-gapped, download the installer, where you download the installer file and build your management server. The moment you complete the job, you will see that console where all your management console components will be here. This is where the central location will be there for continue the job and registering the systems. The step after that, it should be for licensing. So you need to come over here for licensing and register the purchased license. As you noticed, it was online. So sometimes the customers will be frustrated how the console is online and I will be able to activate. And that's why we understand such requirements, and we able here to register offline management server. And this is on cloud.acronis.com. So where you will be downloading from here activation file, you download registration file, upload it to the cloud, and they download your activation file, come here, upload it to the console. So this is how we simply integrating the cloud console with the local offline console and synchronize the license between, making sure that the license will come. It is now the time to register your devices. So simply click add and you will be able to add the workstations, Windows or Mac, servers or Linux, the virtualization environment. You can add also for application aware backup for more consistent backup. Even if you have huge number of machines, we have a possibility for mass deployment where we can scan Active Directory or scan local network or even import from a file the list of the machines that we will protect. By end of this process, you install the agent on all your company devices, and it will show up like this. You will see all your VMware environment, for example, where your vCenter, the data center, and the cluster, and every node with the machines on top of it. If you have Hyper-V, for example, from Microsoft, you will be able to see the host and the VMs. If you have SQL database, you can see the database and the instances or database inside it. So this is now the job that we completed by centralizing the management, and we can control the whole substation machines and devices. It is now the time to protect these machines. So, and this is will come to the beauty of single protection plan, where you will be able to see the backup and cybersecurity and patching and the vulnerability assessment, where you have all this running in one single protection plan. And to talk simply about the backup, you will be able to see that I can backup entire machine or disk or volume, file or folder. Most of the time for uptime, maintaining the uptime as needed, we should backup the entire machine. We should decide where to backup. I can backup to a local NAS. I can backup also to a tape. So I define the schedule that I need to backup every day. I can backup every minute, every hour. So you can decide here whatever you are looking for as a schedule. Important, the retention. You need to decide here, I need to maintain this backup maybe for 6 months, for 1 year, you decide. And thanks for Mirage highlighting the importance of encryption to make sure of the security and privacy. You apply here the encryption algorithm and put your cipher key, and this will help you to encrypt your backup. No one can recover it, no one can browse it unless it is the owner of the backup file. You can also enable application-aware backup, and this is very important for consistent backup. You don't need to recover the entire system, even if you have one database corruption, one instance problem. You don't need that. You just discover this one single database to its own instance, and this will make even your uptime faster. Instead of restoring 10 terabytes of data, you just restored 1 terabyte of that database only. So this is how we are trying in the solution to make it smaller and modular to make your life easier when we come to recovery. The beauty also in the plan that you can inject the second location. So you can back up to that first location, and you can select over here replica to happen on a secondary NAS on different site, and this will help you to select another retention. So maybe this will be central location where I will maintain my backups for 12 months. So I have 6 months here on the primary NAS. I have 12 months here on the secondary NAS. I still can add multiple more sites. Maybe you need to make it in a later time at night or something. So you can come here and create replication plan, and this will help you to do the job at separate time. Once you finish all of that, you can simply attach these devices or this plan to the devices in your company. You can select here if you have grouping for the systems, maybe the DCS system, maybe the PLC control system, ICS systems, SCADA systems. So you can segmentation can be applied on these machines, and you can select, I need to apply the backup plan on these machines only. So this will, how it's very easy to control or configure the backup and push the protection plan to the machine. And now it's done from configuration point of view. It is now the time to operate the solution, where you will be able now to see your backups. You can notice from here that till today, my last backup was successfully done for this machine. I have some machines not really backed up at the latest, where I can start to check what happened over here, why it didn't work. I have notifications here with alerts to tell me if we have malware detected in case of ransomware attack. It will be also notifying you, be careful, there is ransomware attack. We also notify you in case we have malware inside your backup. So this is exactly as mentioned by Mirage, where we able to make use of the backup and scan it and ensure that it is clean from any malware, and the moment you recover that backup, you will not reinfect your environment, because this is very crucial to link the backup with the security. Normally, we think that backup, if I have backup, I'm fine, I can wait for any disaster and format my system and restore from backup, but this is not really a good best practice. You should have your backup, you should have your cybersecurity in place. And the beauty in Acronis and the masterpiece of the product that we give you both are fully engineered, are fully integrated to do the job, where we scan our backup using our cybersecurity tool. And it is the time now to recover whenever you have disaster or you have any data loss or data damage. It is possible now to be able to see the locations. You know here that I put 6-month retention. I have a table where I put 12-month retention. Maybe in other sectors we can use cloud, but probably in OT is always between the NAS and TAB. So you can simply recover the entire machine. You can recover individual files and folders, and you see what is missing. Maybe somehow human errors are always happening when we delete some files, or somehow we configure some files. So it is a good time where you will be able to come and select whatever binary file, whatever configuration file was done here by mistake, and you can simply select that file and restore from. I can just restore it from here. I can download it to the machine in case I need to use it for testing as well. Faster recovery is possible here with run as a VM. So this is, if you collect the entire machine recovery, it will be really a long time to do that. But the moment you can run as a VM, you can run your backup really as a virtual machine, booting from the NAS and powering this on a VMware environment or Hyper-V environment. And this will give the best and the minimum uptime all the time. Thank you for that. I will send it back to you, James, so we can continue. And thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for that. Gents, if I can ask you to come back on screen here. We've got a bunch of good questions here. So we have a question from the audience that says, why aren't OT vendors globally coming up with cybersecurity regulations to protect their customers in addition to local authority regulations to kind of help reduce cyber risk globally? I have some thoughts on this. I truly wish that there was more a kind of inter-vendor cooperation, but I think it's difficult in an environment when you have, I think there's something like 2,000 cybersecurity vendors worldwide, each attacking the problem in very specific and innovative ways, and that it is very difficult to forge standards that can be meaningfully subscribed to by such a diverse and fast-moving community. I think the best that we can hope for in terms of standards there is government compliance, which I think has done a lot to move progress forward on, for instance, protecting consumer privacy. You're looking at initiatives like GDPR. I'm sure many of you are doing business in Europe and have had to wrestle with those. I think that has kind of been a good, useful counterweight to some of the privacy incursions that have been wreaked on us by things like social media platforms. So it's a beautiful idea that I don't see as becoming practicable in terms of getting such a huge diverse community working together. I wish it were so. Let's move on. We've got some other questions here. Can you share the Acronis backup configuration document? Is that something that we can do, Khalid?
Yes, for sure. So we have this documentation is public. So if you just type the Acronis support documentation, you will see the entire stack of all our products, and every product, it has sub documents under that section. So it is available online publicly.
All right, got another question here. When it comes to cloud, especially Microsoft, how are we integrated? That might be another one you
Yeah.
can answer, Khalid, there.
Yeah, sure. So for integration with the cloud, we have full integration, especially with Microsoft Cloud, where we can continue to do the job on cloud, same as I showed in my demo, pushing the agent to the machines, whatever it is, Windows or Linux machines, you can do exactly the same if this is a virtual machine on Azure. So simply the same operating system, deploy the agent on top of it and register to the console, and you will have the full manageability on that machine to push the backup plan and to do the protection as needed.
All right, another question here. What is the challenge in implementing the solution on storage in the data center and disaster recovery site instead of the backup? I'm not sure I get the gist of that, but I think we can certainly talk to the idea of how we deal with the requirement for some flexibility in where we store data, where we store backup archives, how it relates to disaster recovery.
Yes, exactly. So the idea will come initially based on the customer demand and the customer requirements. So we listen to their regulations for protecting the data, because some customers will say, I'm fully enough with one backup copy. I have the production on this data center. I have storage for the backup. I will maintain one backup copy. Some other data centers, they really know the risk of losing their data and how this will cost them too much, and they, based on that, they will recommend us, please, I have another site, separate site, maybe away 100 kilometers for something, and I need to push data to that remote location to have a second copy. So in case I have full disaster to the primary site, I still have copy on the secondary site that will, I can bring it up again and sustain the continuity of the business. So this is depending on their demand. We offer our solution and we customize it based on their requirements.
All right, another good question here. Resilience and business continuity risks are increasing with IoT and industrial IoT sensors and cloud-based data analysis. Can you share some best practices about protection for IoT, industrial IoT, data-based risks, and cyber risks? I think, Miraj, this is a good one for you.
Excellent question, James.
That's from our audience.
That's exactly.
We have a smart audience, I think.
And we got a smart audience, and it's great questions coming in. When we put those IoT or IIoT networks, it's all start from the assessments. We need to put a risk assessment before we start putting that IoT network in design. So I will not go through in deep on a lot of technicalities involved. I would say that follow the strategy of defense in depth, follow the strategy of zones and conduit, segregation, and zero trust. That's coming a lot of in the conversations as well. Siraj has put one slide on that, on the zero trust architecture as well. So follow the industry regulatory requirements, and let's say IEC 62443. Siraj was also given a brief information on that, and that give you the opportunity to develop a Purdue model that can able to give you the holistic approach, how you can able to block those threat vectors. So that being said, is we also need to put those countermeasures. What are the countermeasures that we got in our environment that can able to defend those internal or external attacks? So there's a lot of deep sciences involved when we are putting those architectures in place. And also I was talking about risk analysis. Hey, these are the very critical assets. We cannot afford going them offline, or the uptime is really mandatory. Then we group those assets in a different zone, and then we make sure that those critical assets are being available in terms of backups, in terms of their their uptime, and the CPU, or it could be any other hardware failure, having those. So there's a lot of strategies required, and to keep that business continuity and resilience in place and going. So that I want to put that as a quick answer to that question. Thank you.
That's fantastic. We've already kind of outstayed our welcome with the audience, I'm afraid, and that's really all the time we have for questions. I want to thank my amazing speakers and panelists today, Mohammed Siraj and Miraj Mohammed of Schneider Electric, and my Acronis colleagues, Mohammed Khalid and Ryan Davis. All right, so it's time to do a quick wrap up here. And that promised prize drawing. Attendees, if you can please scan that code. We will ask you to fill out a very, very short survey, and that will get you entered into the contest. I believe we're going to put the link to that in the Zoom chat. Rudy, if you can do that for our audience there, you'll see that a link to that survey as well. I'm going to leave that up on the screen while I talk a little bit about some of the resources that we have available to you in the Acronis Resource Center. There's hundreds of white papers, ebooks, case studies, other helpful documents you can download for free. The ones I'm highlighting today are an Acronis section of our website on manufacturing solutions, and also 4 case studies that we have with our clients and our partners in manufacturing. I'm going to put those up now. Tata Steel, ABB, Johnson Electric, and BD Pharma. I encourage you to download these. These are all complimentary and can give you some more insight into how your colleagues and peers in the industry are tackling some of the challenges that we discussed today with the help of Acronis. As a last word, I'd say if you have the means and the inclination, please support the Acronis Cyber Foundation. This is our nonprofit arm that builds schools and provides technical training to children in areas of the world that need the help. If you've got the means to help us out there, your money goes really far there. With that, I would like to say thanks everyone so much for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. We hope to see you at an Acronis event soon. In the meantime, be safe, be secure, be well, everybody. Have a great rest of your afternoon and evening.